professor because you can't go home and tell your dad, I don't want to study medicine anymore. And I went to him and I said, sir, can you please talk to my dad and tell him that I'm not suited for this life? I wanted to be a photographer.
You know what? So that is where the relentlessness came from. You know, there's something in everyone. And sometimes it takes something to trigger that very thing to let you know your true self.
Hello and welcome to She with Ade, the One. I'm so thrilled to have you here with me today. Today, we're going to continue with the theme of new beginnings, exploring powerful stories of resilience, reinvention, and courage with my wonderful panel. But before we begin, I'd like to ask you, what's one thing, just one thing you're grateful for today? For me, I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect with these incredible souls and share stories that inspire change. Feel free to pause and reflect on your own answer. It's a great way to start any day or end one at that. While we're missing one of my planned guests due to circumstances unforeseen, we have two absolutely phenomenal women with us today who'll take us on their journey of transformation and hope. And since we're one guest short, I'll also be jumping in with some of my own experiences and stories to hopefully keep things lively. So let's dive in. My first panelist, my first guest, is Dr. Adepero Mettabel Okulaja, who I will refer to as Mettabel for the rest of this podcast. Mettabel is a multifaceted professional whose talents span medicine, literature, music, and spiritual teaching. As a practicing internal medicine physician, Dr. Okulaja integrates holistic approaches into her patient care. She's also the author of The Voice of One Woman, an anthology of poems, prose, and messages that celebrate self-image and the belief that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. Beyond her medical and literary contributions, she's also a Bible teacher and a performing artist with inspiring singles like my favorite, Moshe Bolaton, that resonate with themes of faith and resilience. Dr. Okulaja's story is one of purpose, of service, and of empowerment. So welcome, Adepero Mettabel.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Oh, bless you. My second guest is Sally Bossman, an inspiring author, motivational speaker, and co-pastor of Praise Harvest Community Church in Roswell, Georgia, Atlanta, alongside her wonderful husband, Emmanuel. Sally's journey is a testament to resilience and adaptability. She left her teaching job in the UK to join her husband in the US, retrained as an IT professional, and now she works with pharmaceutical companies, analyzing clinical trial data to improve patient care. Sally is the author of 3 books, of which the best known is The Relentless Woman, a book that empowers women to discover their purpose and pursue goals with determination. After 17 years of trying, Sally and her husband were blessed with their now 2-year-old daughter, Reliana, a wonderful miracle. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited I can hardly sit still. So I'm going to start with Mettabel. And my first question for you is, what inspired you to integrate holistic medicine practices? And I know you're an advocate of vitamin D in particular. It's your thing. And aesthetics into your practice. And, how does it shape the way that the care that you provide?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that question. That's a really interesting question. I actually went into medicine by mistake, not by mistake, but out of, I don't know how to describe it, but we all know in Nigeria, when you are about to go into college, you have 5 or 6 professions that you have to choose from: medicine, law, accounting, etc., etc., etc. And I was in the science classes, and so I got in for medicine, and I really went in not really knowing what I was getting into. And in my first year, and no, I don't think anyone knows what they're getting into when they go into medical school, believe me. And in my first year, I felt so out of place. I went to my professor because you can't go home and tell your dad, I don't want to study medicine anymore. And I went to him and I said, Sir, can you please talk to my dad and tell him that I'm not suited for this life? I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a photographer, a linguist, and a singer. What am I doing here with dead bodies? And actually, that was not my first year. That was my first pre-clinical year. We just started anatomy, and it was like, oh my God, I don't want this. But anyways, I graduated from medical school, and 2 years later, I relocated to the United States of America. I was a pediatric medicine diehard person. I wanted to be a pediatrician because I felt that in Nigeria, everyone died who was in internal medicine. And here I was thrust into this new world where I actually started seeing people survive. I would see people who came into the hospital half dead, resurrected. And it was like, wow, this is a new world. But I still had a love of pediatrics, which is kind of paradoxical because I don't practice pediatrics anymore. I no longer practice pediatrics. And I went to this ER doctor who just happened to be a med peds physician. I'm like, what's this about? He said, well, it's a combination of internal medicine and pediatrics. You'll be boarded in internal medicine and boarded in pediatrics. Had I known that I would be entering into a schizophrenic world, I probably wouldn't have done it, but but I did, and I loved it. I loved it, and I went through residency. It was an intense residency because we didn't have as many electives as the other people who were in single residencies. And then I was launched into my practice. And it made a huge difference for me because I started my practice in this rural, very rural. I think you visited me there at one point in time. It was very rural, and it was amazing to see that I would treat people, particularly for depression. I would treat people and they wouldn't get better. I saw people who were successful, who were good at their jobs, but they would be depressed, and I did not understand it. And where I was coming from in Philadelphia, you treat a person with 1 antidepressant, 2 at the most, and they'd be fine. But here I had people on 4 antidepressants, and they still felt depressed. So it was like, there must be something else going on. There must be something else going on. And I realized at that time that going through training is one thing. Having a real life person in front of you is something totally different. And I am a very intense person. I get into whatever I'm doing. So I got into the lives of these people. And remember, I'm med peds, so I had people from 0 to 99. And I saw this depression, these chronic illnesses passing down the line from child to mother to grandparent to great grandparent. Sometimes I had 4 generations. And I won't bore you with a long story, but I myself started to feel some of these symptoms. And I've always been a bubbly person. Nobody could ever describe me as being depressed. But I started to feel fatigued and depressed. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm also a person of faith, like she mentioned. And I remember one day laying flat out on the floor in my bedroom, just my face to the ground, saying, Lord, I feel as if I'm going to die. What is wrong with me? And I felt that the answer wasn't moving because I was in a rural community and I was a city girl. I'm a city girl by heart. So I thought moving to Minneapolis will help me, but it didn't. It still continued, and I continued to see my patients. But then one day I was reading a blurb. There's a lot to this story, but I can't say it all right now. But I was reading a blurb about Somali women because they cover up being prone to vitamin D deficiency. And I saw a lot of them. They would come in with body aches and pains and fatigue and all sorts of somatic problems that I could relate to the patients that I was seeing in my rural community. And I started to check their vitamin D levels because I was talking to an older physician about another patient. And I said, this is going on with him. This is going on with him. And he said, check his vitamin D level. He vitamin D deficient. Old Turkish doctor. So I'm an obedient girl. I checked the boy's vitamin D level. And it was low. It wasn't as low as I expected it to be, but it was low. I had no clue how to correct it, but I corrected it. And this boy, who was gothic, silent to the point of muteness, depressed, refractory depression, came to his next appointment. And I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" He said, "Hi." I said, "Oh my God, you speak. You speak. You have a voice." And I could tell that it was the vitamin D, or the vitamin D as we call it over here, that made the difference. And that started my journey with integrative medicine. And integrative medicine simply is integrating every part of a person's being into their healthcare. That is their spirit, which I leave to them. I tell people that you must believe in a higher power, otherwise it ends with you, and you don't want it to end with you. And that's the extent to which I go with my patients most of the time. And then you have your soul, which a lot of people ignore, your will, your intellect, your emotions, which actually forms the greater part of your health and your well-being. And then we have the body, which it expresses through. That's the only thing we need our body for expression. So a lot of the diseases that we're dealing with either come from our spirit or our minds, and maybe sometimes the plumbing not working. So we fix the plumbing, it doesn't get better, we have to go to the mind. If it's not better, we go to other. So that's the gist of integrative medicine. It's a holistic way of taking care of the whole person. And in this case, how I would describe it is that I tried the body giving the antidepressants, but then I had to go deeper into the body and find these vitamins, which will now affect the way their soul presents, their intellect, their will, their emotions present, and then they get well. It's very rewarding. I can tell you that. I've been practicing medicine now, for over 30 years. People don't believe that, but the most rewarding part of my career has been switching to this integrative mode of taking care of patients. And I started with vitamin D, but now I have this gamut of tests that I run on my patients. And it's beautiful to see how people live life excellently well. I have, and I'm going to end with this, lest I talk too much. I'm passionate about this. But next month, we are going to celebrate the birthday of the oldest person in my panel, my clinic panel. She's 98 years old.
Wow.
And she is all there. She is all there. She walks in, albeit with the aid of a walker. She's been here for 98 years, but her mentation is amazing. Her body is cooperating, and when it doesn't cooperate, like I said, we fix the plumbing. But that is a beautiful part of my practice that I stumbled into serendipitously, but has been the most rewarding part of my career. And recently, like you said, we just added the aesthetic part of the clinic. It's called the Doctor's House of Natural Beauty. My practice is called the Doctor's House, where the doctor is always at home. So you can come visit me anytime. And we actually see patients all over the U.S. We see patients through telehealth. We see patients in person because, this is an area of medicine that's not really, it hasn't taken root to a large extent in the United States, which is a little bit sad, but we're moving on. But the aesthetic part of it also follows the same premise. Like the Doctor's House of Natural Beauty, we do not conceal, we enhance. And it's taking on that holistic approach also, because sometimes, like I said, the plumbing needs fixing. Some people have stuff that they need to take care of, refractory acne, that can feed into the soul, into their self-esteem. So it's the same orb, so to speak, of integrative medicine, taking care of the body holistically, the mind, the soul holistically, and the spirit in conjunction with my patients. And that's my story.
I absolutely love it. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so proud of you. I mean, you're my little sister, so I can't.
I know.
So proud of you and everything that you've been doing. And you certainly got me onto vitamin D. And even though I keep saying to you, I can't tell the difference, you say, just keep going, because it's not about now. It's about making sure you have enough stores for the future. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Difference. You're trying.
I always have it. I'm sorry. It's too much fun, honestly. Okay, I'm just going to switch over now to Sally. Sally, your journey has been one of transformation from leaving the teaching career in the UK to retrain as an IT professional. How did you find the courage to embrace such a significant change? And what did you learn about yourself along the way? Particularly what you learned about yourself, I think. I'm very interested.
Thank you for this question. So, as you said earlier, I was in the UK and my husband relocated to the United States. So, I had to join him here. So, whilst I was in the UK, I was teaching in a college. And so, when I relocated to Atlanta, I had to take some courses in order to teach in Atlanta. I attempted those courses, like I think twice, and I failed. And so I decided, what is next for me? What is next for me? And so I said I have to actually start from somewhere in order to get to where I'm going. And so I decided to start teaching in an elementary school. It was a private elementary school. So whilst I was there, I mean, it was a private school, so the proprietor knew my qualification and what I used to do. I mean, my resume tells. And she told me she couldn't pay me how much I was due. I said, no problem. And so she promised me that the next semester or the next quarter, she was going to increase my pay. And I realized at a point she was taking advantage of me. Anytime she tells me she was going to increase my pay, when the time comes, she'll tell me, oh, I didn't get enough enrollment, so I can't give you the pay. So at a point, I wasn't even asking for much. All I was asking for a couple of dollars increase. And she said no. And I was doing all the job. I'm a person that it doesn't matter how much you're paying me. If I sign up for a job, I have to do the job as I'm supposed to do. And so she was seeing that weakness. I don't know if it's a weakness, but she saw that weakness and she capitalized on that. So one time I walked to her office and I'm like, when are you going to give me the increase? She said, if you think you're overqualified, you can quit. There are a lot of people in line waiting for this job. And that's sparked something in me. That's triggered something in me. And so when I came back home, I took my books and I started practicing. I'm like, I'm going to pass the next exam that I write. I'm not going to fail any longer. I think that was good because I was becoming comfortable at that place, even though I knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be. But I was like, everything is working. I mean, I at least can pay my bills. And so it's okay. I would write the test, but at my own time. But when she said that, if I think I'm overqualified, I can quit, it triggered something in me. I started practicing and I actually passed the next attempt. And I was speaking to a friend, actually, that's my husband's friend, and she's like, what do you do? And I told her what I used to do in the UK and all that. And she's like, where are you working now? I said, oh, I work for a private school. And she's like, oh my goodness. So what do you want to do? And I said, I just wrote the exam. They call it GAZE, Georgia Association of something, GAZE. Yeah. I just wrote the GAZE and I passed. And so I'm going to look for a place to teach. I actually started in the middle school. I started teaching in the middle school, but I didn't like it so much because the kids would make fun of me. I had an accent and it wasn't something I really wanted to do because in London, I was teaching college. I give you your work. If you want to do it, I don't care. At the end of the day, I'll be paid, But these kids, you have to make sure they pass their test, you're responsible for them. So I felt at a point that this is not for me. I needed a change of career. I needed to do something different. So my friend tried to talk me into research. And I'm like, I don't think I'm a research person. So I don't think this is for me. Let me just go find me. And so I was there and another friend told me about quality assurance. And I'm like, I think this is a little bit interesting. So I entered, I started a course and I got a job. It was a very good paying job. I was receiving twice or three times how much I was making in that school.
Wow.
And at a point, I felt my friend came again to talk me into the research again. And she gave me all the scenarios and made it very attractive to me. And my goodness, I think it's one of the best decisions I ever made. I think when I was a child, I always wanted to be a pharmacist, but I don't know where that dream went. It went somewhere. But as the friend talked to me and I started doing this research, it triggered a whole new thing in my life, and I began to be so interested in pharmaceutical. And so what I do currently is I'm a lead data scientist. So what I do is we have patients. So I'm doing oncology, I'm doing neurology, and I'm doing rare disease. So we have patients in the clinic where we have monitors, we have clinical clinicians who take care of the patients. And once they gather their data, I look at the data, I clean the data, and I make sure it's ready for analysis. And I can't tell you how rewarding, not only in monetary terms, but it's kind of satisfaction to me. I love it. I love what I do now. So that's a little bit about my journey.
But what have you learned about yourself in all of this?
Oh, you know what? So that is where the relentlessness came from. There's something in everyone, and sometimes it takes something to trigger that very thing to let you know your true self. And so it's very important for you to sometimes have, I would say, some bananas in your life who will push you to the edge to trigger that very thing in you to learn about your true self.
Well, thank you, Sally. I love that story. And it's turning out to be a very medical-oriented podcast because, I'm a retired ophthalmologist, as you both know. And your stories, both of them resonate with me so much because like Mettabel, I never really wanted to be a doctor either. I became a doctor because of my father, who said to us three, "You're the doctor, you're the lawyer, and you're the engineer." And that's exactly what we did. Although none of us are currently doing what we trained for, but it was all about, "Hey, Dad, there you are. Here's the certificate." But after I did become a doctor and I thankfully found ophthalmology, it served me very well for 30 odd years. And I've now retired. But towards the point where I was thinking of retirement, which I'd been thinking of for almost a decade before I actually did it, I was tired. I was fed up of it. I didn't like all the bureaucracy that we experience in the NHS. And I knew that I had an awful lot more on my inside that I wanted to give and to experience. But because of the nature of my work, I couldn't do it because I was far too tired after doing a whole day of work to even be as creative as I know that I am. I mean, I did in some ways, but my soul was starving and I just had to quit. And even today, people say to me, "Oh, you're too young," at 62 to have retired. And I said, well, yes, I've retired from medicine, but really my heart is for women and for encouraging people, as well as all manner of artistic expression. So I'm feeling really, really grounded and at peace and joyous through this discussion right away. Even this podcast is like talk about a new beginning. It felt like jumping into the deep end of a pool and not being sure about this floating malarkey. Have you ever, both of you, have you experienced that sink or swim feeling when you've stepped into something new? And what kept you going? What kept you afloat?
Oh, yes.
Let's do with Mettabel first, shall we?
Well, the biggest one that I can think of is when I quit my job. I quit my job, and that's been 7 years now, which is like unfathomable to me. Like I said, I've always been I've never wanted to be a doctor. I enjoyed my job, and I found what my passion was in my work, and my passion can be expressed in so many ways. And it was triggered by this little sticker thing that I saw, and on it, it's actually still in my house somewhere. It says, "What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail?"
Yes, that's a good.
And that quote is the quote that I think everybody should ask themselves to discover what their passion is. Because it's like, okay, if I had an absolute certainty, that this was going to succeed, if I had a safety net on the underneath me, what would I do? And I realized that my passion was people. And I always tell my patients that whether I'm sitting in front of you discussing type 2 diabetes or whatever, or I'm standing in a mall peddling perfume, I'm in my passions, because as long as I can talk to somebody and connect with somebody and inspire somebody, that's it. That's it. That's it for me. And so I'm in this job, this conveyor belt thing, and I made money for my system. I really made money. They didn't like the way I worked, because I worked on conventional hours. I saw patients for some, I can't even imagine how I did it. Some patients I would see for 3 hours, just trying to figure out what was wrong with them. Yeah, I would schedule them at the end of my day, and then say, come at the end of my day for 3 hours between 6 and 8. I remember seeing a patient once, and we discovered that he had a developmental abnormality at the age of 48. He was born with it, and I discovered it during his first visit. I sat with him for 2 hours. But this was, my colleagues, I don't like to say, I don't like, people say it a lot, but I don't like to say that they felt that my colleagues were jealous of me and what I was doing. Yeah, you can see how uncomfortable I am with that word, but I didn't sit well in that practice. I did not sit well. It was a huge practice here. And my experience there, and when God is in your life and he tells you what to do, it's beautiful. And I'll put it all together. And so and then all this stuff started happening around me, and it was, I'm British educated in Nigeria, and so we use certain words that are not American, and they may seem hoity-toity or a little bit uppity to some people. And so, I got this reputation. Oh, she's talking down on people. I've never talked down on anybody in my life, but it created an unhealthy and toxic work atmosphere. And one day I was sitting at my desk, and I was talking to God, and he said, if you quit this, if you find another job, will you quit this job? I said, of course I would. And then he said, if you don't have another job, would you quit this job? I said, yes. He said, then quit. And right there and then, I typed out my resignation letter on my computer. By the way, I was the only female physician in that group for 11 and a half years. The average length of time that females lasted in that practice was 2 years. I lasted 11 and a half years. I had 9 male partners when I started. And nobody thought I could hold myself for 11 and a half years. And so I quit. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done, because I didn't prepare to quit. I knew I had the concept of the doctor's house in my mind. I'm still not there, because the dream is to have a house that you drive into, and it's the doctor's house, and you can pick a room and go to the living room while you're waiting for your appointment, go to the kitchen, make yourself a sandwich while you're waiting for your doctor's appointment. So that was the dream. So anyways, to redirect myself, because I can get a little bit verbose there, I quit. And one day I was just there, and it's about not knowing how you're going to survive. And the scripture came to my mind: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It was like a light bulb came up in my brain. I was actually sleeping cramped up in my chaise lounge, because I couldn't see the way forward. But when I heard that, it just inspired me. And some serendipitous, miraculous things happened after that. And the doctor's house was born barely a month after I left my old job. And I'm still here, and I'm still standing.
Sally, can we hear from you on the
That's
same?
phenomenal. Yeah, so I like one thing that Dr. Okulaja said, that, sometimes you're afraid of what
Call
will
me
happen.
Mettabel.
Oh, okay. Sometimes, God will be speaking to you, but you're kind of afraid to step out and do what God is saying. And it's like our scary places. But I have come to know that the best things in life is never within our reach. It's always beyond, or just above our, just beyond our comfort zone. And sometimes you have to reach out and grab it. And so, as I was telling you, I was working in this private school. I I kind of found some comfort, which I realized that wasn't where I was supposed to be. But I realized it was paying the bills and I'm okay. I was just comfortable. But sometimes you have to get some triggers, as I said earlier on, to push you a little beyond the edge, to get to where the best things in life are. And so I realized that just doing something else to kind of spark or bring out the best in me would help. So that is why I wrote the exams, as I said. And then once I got the certification, I went to tell the woman, I think there are a lot of people lined up for this job. So why don't you give the job to them? And she's like, oh, if it's about the pay, don't worry. I'm going to increase the pay. I'm going to give you 2 times, 3 times. I'm like, no.
Carrot.
And so and I think doing that also generated a new passion in me. That's the passion of hosting like women events and telling
Oh,
women
wow.
my story to let them know that there's always a best version of yourself, but you have to develop that version so that people can pay that price for it. Because if you remain where you are and you are comfortable and you don't move out to get your feet wet, then you'll be getting the minimum the minimum wage. But if you push yourself a little bit, then you can develop yourself to a version 2.0 and people will be paying for that. So that is kind of something that I've always held on to, and it's helping me to make progress in life.
Wow.
Can I just say something here? That it's so great that you said that. I remember something that one of the mentors I developed here said to me, and when I was talking about leaving my job, and I talked to him, and after a while he looked at me and said, the golden noose. I said, what's a golden noose?
Yeah, it's when
He
they
said, it's a noose. It's a noose that, it's golden, but it keeps you trapped. Like you said, you have this salary, you're comfortable. I left my job. I was one of the highest producers in the clinic. So it wasn't like I left because I wasn't successful. I left because it didn't fit the model of what I wanted to do. It didn't fit my passion. The whole bent of the clinic was not in that area. But, you kind of want to rationalize that away because your financial reimbursement keeps you there. So, but not realizing that if you step out, it might be a little bit rough. It's still a little bit rough, from stepping out. So I'm out of the golden noose. And yeah, so step out boldly. And that's why I love what you did, just stepping out boldly, step out of the golden noose, take it off your neck and realize that you are stronger, you are better, you are more talented than your future.
That's right.
And it's what will take you there.
I've got goose pimples, or you guys will say goosebumps. I literally, from my scalp to my toenails at the moment, because I see so much of myself in both of you. I mean, Beryl, Mettabel, you talked about finding your passion. Just like you, I found, because there was a time when I was frustrated out of theatre. There was a time that I was given such a clinic load that it was impossible to do anything else. And I always thought that being an ophthalmic surgeon, that the joy was in theatre work. And I loved it until I wasn't allowed to do any more of it because we were inundated with trainees, etc. And they needed to learn. Anyway, that's a different story for another time. And it really got me down. But in that, I wasn't allowed to do that, really helped me to find what was it really that I enjoyed about the job. And like you, I found that it was people. As long as I had people, I didn't care. I could be on the phone encouraging somebody. And in fact, the things that really gave me joy were if I sat with an elderly person and they finally understood their disease, or they understood how to take their drops properly where they didn't, or they just had somebody to listen to what they had to say, having been 3 weeks without speaking to another human being, as it can be for some of these elderly folk. And it was there that I think my renaissance started. And it's from there that I realized that as long as I can make a difference to one person, that's more than enough for me. And when I decided to retire, there was a lot of fear because I thought I had planned everything, and I had a business and it was generating great money. And I thought, okay, money, not a problem. I will transition seamlessly from being a doctor into being an entrepreneur, and I'll do my podcast, write my book, hopefully get some speaking engagements so I can talk to people. And then I got duped and all the money went, and I've left with a very small NHS pension, which is nothing like what I used to earn. And of course, Pero said, I started getting emails, like 15 emails a day offering you this position and that position and all the rest. And I was very tempted to go back. And then I heard, whoever sets his hand to the plow and looks back is not worthy. I don't think it was so much in context of the kingdom, but just to say, you've made a decision, look forward and do what you can do. And I remember being this last year, sometimes feeling a little bit stuck. And God spoke to me and said, don't worry about the big picture. What can you do? So I narrowed down my focus as really, 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 really laser focused. I wake up in the morning and do one thing towards that dream. And look at us here. We're sitting here. I'm doing it. Amazing. Okay.
It is amazing.
Because I think I might take over the whole podcast if I carry on like this. Oh dear. All right. So I think that brings me nicely to my second round of questions. The first of which is for Mettabel again. And your journey, especially as a single woman, has been filled with purpose, passion, and, to my mind, incredible achievement. So how do you stay motivated to keep pushing forwards when maybe life doesn't quite turn out the way that you had previously hoped? And what can others in similar situations learn from your example? And I know it's a sensitive issue, but I'm more about what you've learned and how you keep going and express yourself in your multivariate, God-given ways.
Well, people say it a lot that this is a sensitive topic. It's a sensitive topic. Well, I think that topic is only sensitive when the people who are in that space are not being sensitive. Sensitive, yes. That's one thing I've learned that, number one, you're not an anomaly. Jesus Christ, who is my Lord and Savior, he wasn't married. But there's this view, and it's sometimes cultural, that you are less than. Nobody ever seeks out in life, starts out in life, especially from my background, saying, oh, I'm not going to get married. I am very surprised because of all my friends, I was the one who got the first marriage proposal. I got my first marriage proposal at the age of 17. I never thought I would be the one that would be single and not having my own personal family at this time. I was engaged for many years, and it fell apart in a most ignominious way. Very ignominious. It was very traumatic for me when we broke up, because I decided actually to keep it like, this is our business. Everyone automatically assumed that it was from me. I'm not going to go into that right now. But I carried that hurt that people did not understand that it wasn't me primarily, for many years. And then it got to a point where I'm like, you know what? This is my life. I've always been someone who has done. And I've always been someone who has known that they have a lot inside of them. And initially was to fill the hours, you've got this, you've got that, press into it. So I have my work. I love my work. And I love music. My church community was a big part of helping me to sublimate some of the things that I wasn't able to do in terms of being in a relationship and have children at that time. And I did that for many years. And one day, I was kind of meditating on something and reading in the Bible about, as you can see, the Bible features a lot in my life, but that's the way it is. we're talking about the gift of talents, and I was intrigued by why the master was very angry with that person that had the one talent. Okay, you only gave them one talent, and then I realized that the parable of the talents to me is not really much about the gifts as the potential in that
Mm.
person.
Ah,
And that person who had the one gift had the singular talent of making it 20 or 25. But because he was like, nope, I'm not going to do all that and have you reap all of the benefit. I'm just going to keep it for you, not knowing that the person who gave him the talents intended to gift him with everything that he turned around in terms of profit. And I realized, you know what? I may have a lot of talents, and it's very hard to have a lot of talents, by the way.
Tell
You
me
never know
about
which one to
it.
face. You never know which one to do. So I'm thinking, okay, the one talent in front of me, I'm going to treat as my only talent so that I can get the maximal, benefit from it. And that's how I started. I sung in choirs for many years. She was my first choir leader. The fact that I can listen to and sing parts today is because of her. I'd say, I can't hear the part. She'd say, listen again. We used to listen on cassettes. Can you imagine cassettes? We'd rewind and we listen. And I learned tonic solfa when I was growing up, but I learned how to listen to music and pick up parts. I learned how to sing alto, tenor. I can sing alto and tenor today because of this woman in front of me. And it was amazing that when I was leaving Nigeria, people thought, okay, you're going for medicine, but we expect your CD next year. I didn't do that until I was 51. It was when I was 50 that I decided that, wow, I'm going to do this. And before then, um, everything that has happened in my life has been kind of like a trigger. I left the choir in my church due to some other reasons, and God put the writing in front of me through someone that wasn't even, part of my writing life. That person said, "You're writing on Facebook. Why don't you write a book?" I'm like, me, a book? Yeah, you write poetry. Why don't you put it together? And that's what I did. I just collated everything that I'd been doing, and I had my book. So, where I'm going to land is this. I was busy for many years, sublimating for many years, and many people find themselves stuck in that sublimation. And that's okay, but that is not, it still leaves you feeling like, oh, I'm doing this because I can't do this.
Less than, yeah.
And again, a little bit less than. And then one day, again, I was reading the Bible and I was reading about Abraham, who was a man who was married to this fantastically beautiful woman called Sarah. And they did not have any children. But you know what? He didn't care. It wasn't his idea to have a child. It was God's idea to have a child. It was God who came to him and said, "You will have a child." Never in the Bible was it mentioned that he had that idea before God put it in his heart. So he was enough. He had his nephew. He had his servant. He's like, yeah, whatever. If I don't have a child, they'll carry on for me. And there was a sentence from the word that kind of encapsulated my life. And it was when God told Abraham, "I am your exceeding great reward." I, not the cattle that you own, not the child that you're going to have that's going to rule the world and gather the world together, not your beautiful wife. I am your reward. And that is what fuels my life. He is my reward. He is the reason why I do everything that I do. Not because I'm single, not because I don't have children right now. It's a state of being for me. So I have inherent worth.
Amen to that.
I
That's
have inherent
amazing.
worth. And nothing can ever take that away from me. Because there's a purpose that I came to fulfill, and my inherent worth is the reason I am. It's the reason that I do. It's the reason why I will do and can do. It's all it's all buried in my inherent worth, and I am worth a lot. I am worth a lot to him.
You are. You are worth an amazing amount. Well, we won't go down that route. Let's keep the program. But we could turn this into church right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But then when
we're
when
not
that
there.
opportunity comes, because it is going to come, and when it comes, it's going to remain the same. I
Mm-hmm.
still have inherent worth, and everything that is in that package now may get parceled out into different things, but it's still inside of me. It's my inherent worth. I am worthy.
You are. And I'll share a little story a bit later if we have some time. So thank you, Pero. That's I keep, sorry about this Mettabel thing. I just can't get my head around it because I've known you as Pero all the time I've known you. So yeah.
One.
So after 17 years of trying to conceive, Sally, your motherhood journey is deeply inspiring. What I want to ask you is, what would you say to women who are navigating long seasons of waiting, especially, when the outcome isn't certain?
So there's a scripture in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. It says, "They that wait upon the Lord, he shall renew their strength." The word wait there doesn't mean when you're waiting, you have to sit down doing nothing. When you're waiting, you have to do what waiters do. When you go to the restaurant, what do the
Love.
waiters do? They wait on you. They are working, they are serving. And so whilst you are waiting, in your moment of waiting or your season of waiting, don't just be sitting down doing absolutely nothing. You have to serve. You have to do something. And so in those moments, I remember in 2017, that's when I started my book, The Relentless Woman, came out. It actually took me 7 years to write that book because it encapsulates my life from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's my life story. And so in my waiting period, that's what I did. In my waiting period, I started doing something. I wrote a book. I had a foundation where I was serving girls, I had a foundation where I was serving women. I was teaching women to be relentless in their pursuit. Sometimes, it's every woman's dream to have a child. I married in 2005. I think you were at the wedding. I don't remember. And
Yes.
after getting married, every woman's dream is to have children and all that. So the first year came, nothing happened. 2 years, oh, it's going to come. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. People gave up on me. And at a point, I gave up on myself, right? So I'm like, what can I do? I know God has a purpose for me, and I'm not going to let my infertility stop me from achieving what God has planned for me. So I'm going to do something. So that is when I discovered myself and I saw the potential in me and I started doing stuff. And so it got to a point I'm like, okay, forget it. It's not going to happen. I'm doing something else. And when I started to kind of not focus on what was not happening, it happened.
Praise God for that. Honestly, it's incredible. And both of you have more or less said the same thing. And I'm going to share, my story is not quite as extended as yours, but I waited almost 8 years before I became a mother. And I remember in the process, I started doing my diploma in ophthalmology, and everybody was like, oh, when is it going to happen? Go for this test, do that test, do this procedure, do the other procedure. And one day I was just being quiet whilst on this training that had taken me away from my home. And God said to me, as he does, he said to me, "You are complete in me." That was it. Which is very much in line with what Mettabel was saying about, I have intrinsic worth. It said it's not about being mama somebody. I mean, I don't call you that in Ghana, but in the part of Nigeria where I come from, you being mama somebody means a lot. It means you're the mother of XYZ. It's not about that. It's not about even being Mrs. Ogunyamade. In God, I'm complete. And from that day, I said to myself, it doesn't matter whether I'm Mrs. somebody or Mama somebody, in God, I'm complete. And I went for that diploma and I focused on my career and all of that. And it was when we came to the UK and I wasn't thinking about it, I was going for my fellowship in ophthalmology, I got pregnant. So that's a story for another day, but it's just this one thing that I learned. We grow so much whilst we're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
You grow
Mm-hmm.
so much whilst we're waiting. You learn to know that you're enough, like Metabel said, and you know that your life consists of much more than being a wife and a mother. So, you know,
Yeah, and you know the culture where we come from.
tell
You've
me
been
about
married for so long, and people will be asking you like, "So when are you going to have a child?" And
it.
all the pressures of life. Sometimes you're human; it gets to you. I cried. There are so
Oh
many
yeah,
times
there
I've
are many
cried
nights
and
of
cried,
crying. I
but
know what you
it got to a point. I'm like, you know what? Forget about everyone. I don't care about what people say. I'm just focusing on myself and what God says about me. That's it. And that's when it happened.
Now,
You know.
and I really hope that this encourages someone who might be in one or the other situation of what we've discussed, that, you know, you are enough. You and God are a majority. You don't need anybody or anyone else. Everything else that comes into your life is great. It's great to have a partner. It's great to have a child. But even if you don't have those things as a woman, you are complete and you are worthy of love and you are worthy to pursue all the innate abilities that God has deposited on the inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say something about that because it colors everything about you. I have people who come to me all the time and they say, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "Do what?" I live life. I live
You
life, and
certainly live life.
I live life. I live life, and it's something that no one can teach it to you. And that's what I want to emphasize here. No one can teach you. No one can show you. You can hear it a million times. You can see it in a million different ways. But the only way that you get to understand that is to first of all introduce yourself to yourself.
That's right.
And if you've introduced yourself to yourself and you've forgotten who you are, reintroduce yourself to yourself and allow God to introduce you to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Even my middle name is not a given name by my parents. My middle name is Metabel in the anglicized version of it, and Mehetabel in the
Hebrew.
Hebrew part of it. And I actually found my name in the Bible. When I got my name, I didn't know that it was in the Bible. But this is a woman. Her name is Metabel, and she was one of the wives of the Edomite kings. And then when they got to her husband, they stopped, mentioned her, mentioned her mother, mentioned her grandmother, and then went back to the men.
Mm.
And that's for those people who think that God does not consider women.
That's a whole
When
lot
you,
of lies,
yeah,
isn't
that's a
it?
whole lot of,
It
yeah, you
really
know what? Yeah, but if he wants to stop, and you have to put yourself in that position, introduce yourself. So Mehetabel means God's favor, favored of God. And so if you're called that, and I tell people, you have the absolute right to rename yourself in God, whoever you want to be. I have a person who calls themselves, my name is this, happiness that. That's their challenge. And when they are confronted with a challenge, what they confront it with and what they beat it with is that name, happiness. And I used to think that when my name was Metabel, that I'd become a princess and I'd carry my crown. I'm Metabel, favored of God. No, 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 no. It meant that I had challenges. I had huge challenges. And when those huge challenges came, my worth came into being, but then my name, the one that God has said, spoken to my ear, and it would teach me and say, no, you are favored. And that gave me the strength, and that continues to give me the strength to move forward. So, yeah, rename yourself. Choose a name you like. Choose a name that speaks of who you are. You don't have to add it to your official name like I did, but in private. And I like to think about people talking to themselves. Get a mirror, talk to yourself, introduce yourself to yourself, and go out there and be who you are.
Amazing. Introduce yourself to yourself and
Yeah,
go out there and be who you are. I did
be
that
who
many,
you are.
many years ago, and now I have absolutely no apologies. I am who I am. Love me, follow me, don't follow me. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, Pero, I think I'm talking to you a lot, but anyway, you've worn many hats:
Uh-huh.
musician, author, Bible teacher, performing artist. What inspired you? And I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from you. What inspired you to pursue so many creative and professional paths? And how do they all tie into your purpose? Huge question, but
It's a huge question. And the answer is it doesn't really tie up sometimes. It doesn't, But one thing that I've noticed and one thing that I've come to realize is that you can't do everything at the same time. You have a staple, you have a base of who you are. And right now it's my work, running my own clinic. And I hear people say it all the time. How do you do all this? It's in sequence. Like I was doing the music thing for a while between 50 and 53. It was all music, it was all going to the studio. I loved it. And in some way I just realized that that season was coming to an end. And so right now I'm actually in the process of writing my first fiction book. It's so exciting. It's going to be out sometime this year. But I seem to just get that nudge inside of me to do something. But to answer your question, I believe that, even in the Bible we see it. The most versatile man that I know is David. He was first of all a shepherd. He was first of all a runt. Then he was a shepherd. And then he was a king. And then he was a warrior. Then he was a king. And then he became a husband and a father. Not a very good one. But then he was a worshiper along the way. But he did all these things one after the other, not necessarily all at the same time, some two or three at the same time. But then his ultimate goal was what God had called him to be the king of Israel. And he went through this whole gamut of stuff that informed everything that he would do. The shepherding taught him how to see people as people. The music gave him his way of worshiping God. So many things. So everything that I've done, I don't see it yet, but again, that end of inspiring people is at the base of it, whether it's with my music or with my medical practice or with the books that I'm writing or even ministering to people. It's all what ties it all together is my purpose, and my purpose is to inspire people and help them to live life beautiful. That's it.
fab.
Sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't fit, but that's okay.
I think it all fits, but we'll come
It's
to
okay.
that. Sally, you successfully, we talked about it, navigated a major career shift from teaching to IT and working with clinical data for pharmaceutical companies. But, what advice would you give to someone considering a complete reinvention of their professional life?
That's a good question, but I would say everyone needs to assess and examine themselves and see where they are. I always give an example with the GPS navigation system. When you want to travel from point A to point B, you don't just put your destination in the GPS. You first have to put where you are, your current address in the GPS, and then you put your destination. That will help navigate to your destination. So you really need to assess yourself where you are and then look at the journey where you want to get to. And then it will help you to be able to know the processes and the steps that you need to take in order to get to your destination. So I'll say each and every one is different. Mine might have been one path, but if you want to kind of switch careers, you have to assess yourself, look at your interest and what you really want to achieve before you make that journey. Don't just look at what someone has done and kind of follow suit. Assess yourself and look at what you are good at and what you can bring to the table, and then you can make that journey.
Oh, thank you, Sally.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I can relate to Pero because in many ways, I think all three of us really are, it's a term that I actually heard for the first time from Pero, multi-potentialites. I didn't know what this thing was. And it used to really, I can't tell you how many sleepless nights and prayers I have said over, I don't know what to do. I sing, I write, I do art, I'm good at interiors, I'm good at medicine. I don't know. What's my purpose? What's my purpose? And I spent so long worrying about it. And now I look at the whole thing and I think, but everything does fit together. But like you said, Vero, you won't be doing all of it all at the same time. So
Yeah.
now I've
Yeah.
given up on worry. I do whatever my soul and my gut tells me is this is what to be doing now, and that's
Yeah.
enough for me. I
Yeah.
can
And
also relate to the
yeah.
reinvention thing,
Mhm.
because I left a very stable career to pursue my passions, and that was terrifying and thrilling. So, my question to both of you is, do you think reinvention is about bravery, or does it start with something else entirely? And I have my own thoughts, but I don't, I'd like to hear from you, and maybe I'll chip in a little bit at the end.
Sally, you go first.
So it's a mixture, a combination of two or three things. So yes, of course, bravery is one, but sometimes it doesn't just come out, because sometimes if you are waiting to be brave at something, to take initiative, you're going to be there for a very long time. Sometimes you have to do it afraid. There are so many things I've done afraid. Even though I was afraid, I did it. I did it afraid, and at the end of the day, it worked out for me. And so bravery is one, but you will not always be brave. But even if you are afraid, do it afraid. That's what I would say.
So it's more about courage, really, because I
It's
see
about,
courage as,
yeah, it's
you
about
do it
courage.
afraid.
Courage is not the absence of fear, I
Mm.
would say. So sometimes someone being courageous doesn't mean the person is not afraid. They're afraid, but they are doing it anyhow. So yes, I'll say it's a combination of courage, it's a combination of bravery, and it's a combination of I don't know the right word to use here, but if you are waiting for everything to come together for you to take the initiative, you would stay there for a very long time. Let me say
Yeah.
that.
About it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Mettabel?
borrow a book from your leaf, and yeah, I'm actually going to say that what I think helps you to reinvent yourself are two major things for me: fear and hunger.
Hmm.
Fear and hunger. I have a brother who he's never really worked in an office in his entire life. And, he's very successful. My brothers are very successful. Thank God for them. And I asked one of them once and I said, so what keeps you going? He said, Sister P. They call me Sister P. Sister P, I stay hungry. I stay hungry. I don't ever think of it that I have enough on my table. I stay hungry. And
Hmm.
it's not that he's hungry for money, but
Yeah.
he's hungry. He's like, there must be more. There must
Yeah.
be more.
Hmm.
And the fear where that comes in is not a fear of failure. It's actually the fear for me of not achieving everything that I've set out to achieve. The fear, it's a healthy fear.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh my God, oh my God. That one comes, the oh my God comes. But this fear is like, you know what? I don't want to leave anything on the table. There's a song that I used to hear, oh my God, this dates me. Then he filled my life to overflowing,
Hmm.
so but when he fills our life to overflowing, my aim is to empty it all out, empty it all out, empty it all out, empty it all out. And it's yeah. So if we're talking about reinvention, fear and hunger is it for me.
Yeah. And
Fear
I
and
think the
hunger.
power of next is another thing. The power of next. Like when you achieve something, don't just be so excited and talking about it. It's good to celebrate for a while, but then you have to move on to look for your
Yep.
next.
Stay
And
Mm.
it
hungry.
will help you to reinvent yourself all the
Yeah.
time.
Stay
Stay
hungry. Stay
hungry.
hungry.
Stay
Stay
hungry.
stay
I,
hungry.
I think I think for people like us, I don't think we can ever be satiated in the sense that it's just there. It's not that I'm willing it to be there. I just know there's more. And until I have, you know, I've traveled down those routes and experimented with what I think is more. I don't think I can rest. It's something that's deep on the inside of me that won't let me go. Even I have had times, and I'm confessing to this, when I've told God, look, God, you talk a lot of airy fairy nonsense. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's not working. But every time I've tried to run away, I come back to
Yeah.
true north. I
Yeah.
cannot escape it. It's like there's something on the inside that keeps at me, driving me in the direction that I need to go. And like Pero said, one of my biggest things that I want to do is skedaddle into my grave with joy, knowing, there's nothing left. I'm ready.
Yeah. And
That's me.
it's important to give ourselves that permission. I've been in so many places, and yeah, I learned about that word multi-potentialite, but I added a new one to it because I thought I kept thinking, oh, multi-potentialite, you have the potential to do something. And I learned something from masterclass one day, that we have to move from multi-potentialite to multi-hyphenate.
Say that again.
We have to move from being a multi-potentialite to being a multi-hyphenate. So
You
the
will have
multi-potential
to talk
is
a little
I
bit
could
about that
be,
one.
yeah, I have the potential to be, I have this. But we have to move from that to I am, I am, I
Do.
am.
Okay. Okay.
Ah,
I am, I
love
am.
that.
So I had to move from being a multi-potentialite to being a multi-hyphenate. Like
Mhm.
20 years ago, I was a multi-potentialite, but now I am a multi-hyphenate. I am an MD. I am an author. I am a recording artist. I am a spoken word artist. I am a teacher of the word. And goodness knows what else will come my way. And
Yep.
you have to give
Goodness.
yourself permission to be that, because I have had people come up to me and say, is it only you? Why do you have to do all this?
I think they
And
need to go and speak to the man upstairs. It's not
I
your fault.
know they need to, but then it comes to what you just said, and it's a line in one of my spoken word pieces, talking about Joseph. He said, "My dream would not let me be." And Jeremiah said so too. He said, I tried to stop talking. I put tape over my mouth, but it wouldn't stop. I just have to talk. So, why am I saying this? Don't repress yourself, and don't let anyone tell you you're doing too much. If your heart feels at peace, if your heart finds joy, if your heart finds strength to do whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it, because we only answer to a panel of one, and we only dance before an audience of one.
Thank you. That's profound. Thank you, Mettabel. Sally, I'm going to ask you, your journey into motherhood and your professional and spiritual contributions are inspiring. But looking ahead, how do you see this story continuing to evolve? And what difference do you hope to make for those around you?
So it's not been easy. It's just been the grace of God, first of all, I must say so, because in this career, like transition into this career, and then I don't want to mention my age, but a little older. I had my kid a little older, right? And so you don't have the same energy and strength,
No,
right, to
yeah, I
run
get
around and take care of the kid like you were younger. And then we are into ministry as well, so it's not being an easy combination, but the grace of God. What I want to say is that whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve. And so, whatever you are aiming at, whatever blessing God brings your way, at whatever point in life, God knows you can handle it, and God knows you can take care of it. And so, you have to be ready to take on the challenge, and God will give you the grace to be able to carry through.
Mm.
Yes, it might not be rosy on the way, but God will give you the grace to be able to go through. As He's giving me the grace to go through, it's not been an easy journey, but with His grace, I'm able to navigate my way through. And so I believe no one should give up on their dreams and their hopes. At the appointed time, God will make all things beautiful. And when He does, He'll add the grace that you need to be able to
Yeah,
fulfill
amen to
that
that.
calling that He has given you.
Amen to that. Just reflecting on what you were saying, to be honest, nobody's journeys are easy. If you look through the scriptures, they're not easy. You talk to anybody who's been successful at anything at all, and they'll tell you it's not exactly easy. So there is a price to be paid. And, if you're feeling it strongly enough, you're just going to keep going. And until
Mm-hmm.
one day you realize, I've
How did I
hyphenated
do
that
it?
one.
Oh, I love that. I've hyphenated. Oh, I love that. I've hyphenated.
Oh dear. So I'm having way too much fun on this.
Yeah, yeah. Can I say something just
Yes.
really quickly? Yeah. I think also we have to give ourselves permission to feel bad. We have to give ourselves permission to feel sad. We have to feel ourselves permission to feel dissatisfied. We have to
Yeah.
give ourselves permission to do that because sometimes that's the springboard that we need. Sometimes you go down. It's just like you're a diver. You're going on your diving board, and they jump up high and they go way down. But the lower they go, that the higher that trajectory. That higher that trajectory. So we are going to get discouraged. That's the word I'm looking for. Let's give
Mm.
ourselves permission to get discouraged because in the midst of discouragement, it is out of your despair, out of what you thought was dead. When you acknowledge it and you not stay there, but dig deep into it and allow God to help you or whoever inspires you to help you look up, the deeper you go, the higher you're going to jump.
Mm.
So sometimes those times of discouragement will give birth to the greatest heights that you have ever attained. You know,
Wow. Wow.
those, yeah. So, it is repeated throughout history. Even when I was tired of what I was doing, I was so down, but it catapulted me up.
I remember
And
on Adepero.
hey, so la di da di da, it's not always kumbaya, but when you get into that space, just remember to look up. Just look up. And then you'll be able to get out of there, knowing that other people have been there. And some of the people who have had the worst failures, the worst, I mean public, worst failures, have ended up shaping our generation in
Yes.
unimaginable ways.
Mm.
So, and you could be one of those people. I plan to be one of those people.
I'm sure we will be
Yes,
one of those people.
yes,
And
yes.
for me, it doesn't have to be a big thing. If it's one, if it's 10, I'm just happy that whatever I put into the world makes somebody's life
Better.
a little
That's it.
better. And for me, it's like the little moments that shape our legacy, the things we don't even perhaps realize that leave an impact. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
reminded of a lady who I haven't seen for many years because I left that hospital and moved to another hospital for 5, 6 years after she'd left. And she said to me that she's now the first nurse that is able to do eyelid surgery. And where did that come from?
Oh
She used
wow.
to love coming into my minor ops theatre and watch me. And I gradually started giving her more things to do and more things to do. And then she told me she was moving. And I said to her, you need to do a master's. You need to be matron. You need to be, oh, Ade, I can't do it. I barely got through my degree and all of this sort of thing. And I said, no, you're going to do it little by little. And if you need any help ever, I'm here. You can call me about all the terms and whatever, and I'll give you insights. And she didn't really need me. And then what happens? I got a message on Messenger that I hardly ever go into to say,
Mm-hmm.
Ade, I am now matron. Not only that, I'm the only one who does big surgery in the United Kingdom as a nurse. And I sat there. First of all, I froze. Then I got cold. And then I started weeping uncontrollably because I couldn't imagine that, what? Can you see how,
And you're a
the
part of
things are
that.
so tiny, infinitesimal that you don't even think about. But she's not the same. She
Mm-hmm.
is completely different. And did I have some impact? Clearly.
Yes.
Otherwise, I wouldn't
Absolutely.
think
Mm-hmm.
that she needed to tell
Wanted
me
to
about
call you.
it.
Yeah.
But it's these small moments that
Yeah.
stay with you
Mm-hmm.
and make me feel anyway that I can't give up now. I don't
Yeah.
know who else is out there, whoever might be touched by anything that I do. So can you both share just maybe one small moment that has stayed with you and that shapes how you think about your future and your legacy?
So I would just give an example of what I do with the young girls. Like I think in 2016 I went to Ghana, and no, 2017 I went to Ghana, and I hosted an event in a school, and it was all girls school. So I was talking about relentlessness. I realized that most of the kids wanted to do something, but they didn't have a clear pathway of exactly
Mm,
what they wanted to do. So what I do is I organize kind of symposium and get professionals to come and speak to them, so that some of them may have like a clear career pathway. So there was one girl that was kind of the MC for the event. So I saw this girl and I saw a whole lot of potential in her. She was so active. She was very vocal. She was very confident, and she led the group like before I came to speak. And after we finished talking, or we finished the event, she came to me and she's like, I really love, no one has ever come to our school to do anything like this, you know. I want to, she told me her plans, and she told me, but I don't have anyone to help me. So after secondary school, that's it. That's it for me. I'm not going to continue. And I'm like, so what do you want to do? Do you want to do journalism? Because she was fantastic. She was very vocal. She was excellent. You know, her presentation, the way she organized the people, the way she was talking. I saw a whole lot of potential in her. And she said, no, I want to teach. I want to be a teacher. And I said, okay. So when I came back, I started supporting her. I started helping her with her accommodation, with her food, with her fees. And this girl has finished school. She's graduated university, and she's got a job. And I told her I'm coming to Ghana in July to organize a similar event. And she's like, no worry, I'm in charge. I'm going to put everything together for you. I'm like, whoa, that is so excellent. So this is just an encouragement to someone who didn't have hope or anything, any plans for the future, but I was able to kind of encourage her to take the next step in her life. And I think it's not only going to benefit her, but her entire generation. She's going to be able to support her parents and other people as well. And so I think that is very interesting. She's not the only person, but there are so many girls that have come my way, even adult women, you know, whom I have been able to encourage to pursue a course, you know, like I do this show every Thursday, The Relentless Woman. And the woman, one time we went for an event and she came to embrace me. And I'm like,
Who are
what
you?
is that? I was like, and she's like, you know, you pushed me to go back to school. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. She's like, yes, I've been listening to you constantly. And, you know, you encourage me so much. She was in her 50s then, and now I think she's about 60. She's like, even though I was in my 50s, like whatever you said, you've been saying resonates with me. And so I took myself back to school, and now I'm doing amazing. I think she was working in a doctor's office, but now she's gotten promotion. I'll share the last story. I preached in London, I think in 2018. I hosted a women conference for Women Inspirational Network. And there was this lady, I spoke on breaking the limit. And she was a paralegal, and as I was talking, when we had a break, and during the break, the session, one of the sessions, I think she came to me and she's like, I think you are speaking to me. I have been a paralegal for a very long time, and there's always been situations where I can change my I can advance my career, but I'm always afraid. And so this thing that you're saying, it's very interesting. Do you know that 2 years when I went back to London, she had just changed, she had just advanced her career, and she was doing amazing. She was doing amazing. And so, as women, whenever we get the opportunity to speak to people, we should inspire them. We should not look at it as an accident. God has a reason for bringing us together to inspire others.
How do you
So,
top that?
Sarah, what's
So,
one piece of advice or wisdom you'd like to share with anybody standing on the brink of their own new beginning, but they're unsure of how to take the first step?
well, make it a little easy, won't you?
It isn't
Well,
about ease.
no, 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 no. Well, you know what? I can only draw on my own experience, you know. Continue to dream. And I don't mean like your head in the clouds, you know. I'm going to use an acronym. what would you tell someone? It takes steps. It takes steps. And even God, if we look at I used to think that Genesis was the most schizophrenic book in the Bible. I think I've told you that
Love it.
before.
I love
But
it.
I love it. I just love it, because I always say that if you don't know where you're coming from, how do you know where you're going to end? But in the book of Genesis, it's in chapter 1, it says God created the heavens and the earth. And then you think it's all over. And then you go to chapter 2, and then it's like the whole thing is happening again, but out of sequence. And it's like, okay, what is going on here? Until I realized it, that and God kind of gave me an acronym for created. Okay. Created. C, conceptualize. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What is your dream? Conceptualize it. Number 2, ruminate on it. Begin to think about it over and over again. Turn it over in your mind. How's it going to happen? Where's it going to happen? With whom is it going to happen? Da 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 da. And then number E, I said number E, CRE, you engage what you're going to need. What are you going to need? Like the young lady you were talking about, you told her, go do this. Like the nurse that you encouraged, go get your master's done, go back to school. You engage everything that you need. It's not just going to drop out of the sky and land in your lap. You have to engage. And when you engage, then you activate. Then you actually do it. You get what you're going to do. Then you activate it. And then you transition it after you've gotten everything you want. And that is the place where people start to see what you're doing. They don't see all the CREA, they see the T. And that's when it comes from inside of you and appears in time. I am fascinated by time.
Yes,
And all the yeah, and all the other things are timeless. The CREA, they're timeless. But then you transition it. And when you transition it is when you begin to put it in place physically. That's when you get your name for your organization. That's when you try to get the space for your organization or whatever idea that you're doing. And then the E is execute. Okay. So you create, you execute, but you don't stop there. Just like Miss Sally didn't stop there, just like you didn't stop there. You have to disseminate, because if you create and you don't create it, it's going to be all useless. It's going to end with you. So you conceptualize, you ruminate on it, you engage, you activate, transition, execute, and disseminate. That is when you have created. That's when you've created something new. That's when you step into your new space. And always realize that some of it will be timeless. It will be your mind from time immemorial. And then when it enters into time, it then becomes tangible, just like God created everything in Genesis chapter 1. But then in Genesis chapter 2, he created man last on the 6th day. But in Genesis chapter 2, you see man coming in before the animals. So we are the most important people we're the most important component of this equation we call life. And so everything that you will ever need, God has made in the timeless sphere. But in time, as you begin to conceptualize, ruminate, engage, activate, transition, then it steps into time. But it will take time. You have everything you need, but remember, it will take time. It might take a minute, it might take a year, it might take 10 years, but just keep the faith. Just keep the faith, keep dreaming, and keep working on your process. And that's the advice I would give someone. Don't get discouraged.
Oh, wow. I think this will be a good place to stop. Because I really have to go back and chew on that. And I think this is a great place to come to a conclusion. I don't know how to thank you enough, honestly, Dr. Okulaja and Mrs. Sally Bossman, for sharing your incredible journeys and your insights with all of us today. I've loved reflecting on my own experiences along yours, and it's been a truly inspiring discussion, and I have had the best fun. Honestly, thank you for honoring me in this way. And to our listeners, I have 2 free resources to help you on your journey: a value sheet to help you clarify your priorities, and a self-love worksheet to help guide you in nurturing yourself. So you can request these by dropping me a line or messaging me on social media. And don't forget, if you need community, consider joining our supportive Sister Sync community for women stepping into their own new beginnings. I'd also love to hear your questions for any upcoming question and answer episode. So please send them my way. And until next time, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.